Dear friends, welcome to another episode of From the Military World. In this video, we'll talk about a statement made by candidate Donald Trump, who said at a rally that if he is elected, he will withdraw the United States from the defensive support program for Ukraine. But before the video, I was left with an advertisement from our sponsors.
Are you ready to transform your life? If you want to develop your personal side but are too lazy to read a book, no problem. We have the solution. Meet the new audiobook that's changing everything. The voice from the inside. Learn how to absorb knowledge through films and series and apply it to your real life. Discover the secret to using the power of anger to your advantage and not letting it dominate you. Awaken and use the gift of the mind to achieve your goals and turn your ideas into reality. Learn how to overcome anxiety, and never again in your life will you need a psychologist. I guarantee that by diving into this chapter you will discover timeless strategies that the ancients used to overcome fears, face armies, kings, and even win empires. Based on biblical examples, learn the art of communicating better, making your conversations more impactful and meaningful. Understand the importance of being discreet and how this can improve your relationships and personal life, and discover how not to get stuck in the past. Free yourself for a future full of possibilities. Access the power of inner wisdom with the voice from the inside. Listen now and start your journey of transformation. The link is in the comments.
At a rally on Tuesday, September 24th, former president and presidential candidate Donald Trump made, as usual, harsh criticisms of the administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, focusing mainly on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Trump's statement on this terrible war was short, but it perfectly condensed what he and the Republican Party think. He began by saying that he is to blame for the Russian invasion. The Russian declaration of Ukraine is not from Russia, but from the United States. It's basically a repetition of Russian propaganda which says that Russia, in order to defend itself, needs to attack, invade and annex territories in Ukraine. Despite the fact that Ukraine is a fully sovereign nation, internationally recognized, and has the right to decide its own destiny, Putin argues that Ukraine must always remain a valid state, as a Russian past, and that for this reason it cannot get closer to the West. And it was for daring to do so that Putin invaded Ukraine. First, in 2014, by invading and annexing Crimea and starting a terrible separatist war in Donbas. And then, in February 2022, with a full-scale invasion that has already destroyed hundreds of Ukrainian cities, claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Obviously, Putin doesn't recognize the motivation behind his war. After all, it doesn't look good, in the 21st century, to invade a neighboring nation in order to annex territory, as if it were 1939. So, in order to hide the real motivation for the war, Putin claims that he invaded because NATO wanted to get closer to Russia, ignoring the fact that, before the invasion, Russia and NATO already shared more than 1,000 people and 1,000 kilometers of borders in the Baltic countries, Poland and Norway. Trump, by saying that the blame for Russia's invasion of Ukraine lies not with Russia, but with the United States and NATO in addition to reinforcing Russian propaganda, is reducing the terrible war of invasion to a mere disagreement and political rivalry between Democrats and Republicans. With Trump using the despair of millions of Ukrainians as a political weapon to attack his opponent in the presidential elections. At another point in his speech, Putin said that Zelensky is a great salesman. Every time he goes to the United States, he comes home with billions of dollars worth of weapons and ammunition. But in saying this, Trump ignores a very important point. More than 80% of all the money that the United States advertises as aid for Ukraine actually stays in the United States. Some don't know, and Trump doesn't seem to know either, but the weapons and ammunition that Washington sends to Ukraine are taken from surplus material depots in the United States. But for this material to leave, U.S. factories need to be ordered to produce equivalent material to replace it. So when the United States announces, for example, a package of $1 billion in arms and ammunition for Ukraine, at least $800 million will go to the U.S. defense industry, creating jobs and boosting the U.S. economy. Once again, this is pure Russian propaganda, which Trump simply repeats in an attempt to attack his political rival. Finally, Trump said he would negotiate and withdraw the United States from the war, signaling that he will stop the supply of arms, ammunition and humanitarian aid for Ukraine to defend itself against the Russian invasion. If that happens, we can safely say that Putin will win the war, which brings us to a very important point. Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential elections is, for Putin, his greatest hope of victory in Ukraine. If Kamala Harris wins, the support provided by the United States for Ukrainian defense will continue exactly as it is, which means that Ukraine will continue to have the firepower to stop large, forceful Russian advances across its territory, with the firepower in reserve to launch assaults on unexpected areas, as recently happened in Kursk. In addition to continuing to wreak havoc on Russia's important gas and oil structures, which are vital for financing the war, and the gigantic Russian ammunition depots, some of them more than 500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, which are being destroyed at a very fast pace. But if Trump wins, and if he keeps his promises, all this will come to an end, and even if the European allies increase the aid they are already offering, it won't be enough to cover what the United States has sent, so if Trump wins, Putin will win too. It may not be immediate, and Ukraine may still be fighting for a few months. But in the end, Putin will win, thanks to Trump.
Biden and Kamala got us into this war in Ukraine, and now they can't get us out. They can't get us out. I watched him. We will win. We will. He's been saying that for 3 years. Every time Zelensky comes to the United States, he walks away with $100 billion. I think he's the greatest salesman on earth. But we're stuck in that war unless I'm president. I'll get it done. I'll get it negotiated. I'll get out. We got to get out. Biden says, we will not leave until we win. What happens if they win? That's what they do, is they fight wars. As somebody told me the other day, they beat Hitler, they beat Napoleon. That's what they do, they fight. And it's not pleasant, but, we've given them close to $300 billion. And you know what Europe has given them? Which is approximately our size when you add up the countries together. Their economy, it's very close to our size. They've given them like a small fraction of that number, just a small, very small fraction.